G'day Virtual Pilots Requiem. Today we're going to look at the Tempest Mk.V. So starting off, you've got a mechanical landing gear indicator. So if it's protruding, you can see the landing gear's down. Coming inside, here's the rudder trim. You've also got the indicators for this rudder trim, and then underneath that, that's going to be your elevator trim wheel. Now moving forward, here we've got the radiator shutter lever. There's only two positions, it's either going to be open or closed. The flap control lever here, you can extend and retract the flaps. Now on here there's a supercharger, so you have an M ratio which you'll use most of the time, but if you use the S ratio, it'll be about 10,000 feet. There's the landing gear lever, the canopy operating handle, there's your propeller control, and then the big handle next to that is your throttle. So coming up, this is basically your VHF radio. And zooming in, there's your cockpit lighting and gun sight switch, or the flap indicator through 0 and 80 degrees. Coming underneath here is the remote contactor, which is known as a pipsqueak. It sends a signal to the home base when the needle's in the red that lets them know your position so they can vector you to enemy fighters. And there's the landing gear position lights. Under that is your landing gear warning light. Then you've got the boost coil and starter buttons, the clock, and your oxygen delivery and supply. There's the magnetos, the brake pressure for the left and right, the landing lamp, tail trim light. These are your mixture controls. There's three positions. You've got the start, which you use during the engine start, normal for regular operations, and cut out when you're going to shut down the engine. Now the gun sight that the Tempest uses is the Mk.V, so this actually projects the sight directly onto the windscreen. And it functions just like the Mk.II, so underneath you've got the sight controls for the distance and the wingspan. And over on the right hand side, you've got the cockpit light and compass light. Now coming down to the blind flying panel, you've got your airspeed indicator, artificial horizon, vertical speed indicator, altimeter, directional gyro, and the turn and bank indicator. Now coming below that panel, you've got a compass. Now over on the right hand side, there's your tachometer, the boost gauge, compass card, and the fuel gauges for the main wing and nose tanks. And coming down below the fuel tank gauges, and the yellow here, this is your oil pressure gauge, and oil temperature. We have a couple of warning lights for fuel pressure and power failure, and the radiator temperature. And then you've got the canopy jettison, fuel cock levers for all the fuel tanks. Over here we've got the bomb control switches, and the drop tank controls. Now we'll keep coming down. This is the signalling switch box. And then just to the left of that, you've got the carburetor primer and the cylinder primer. Over here is a little switch box, just going to highlight the voltmeter and the navigation lights. Alright, so now we'll have a look at how to get started with the Tempest Mk.V. It's only a few steps to follow, so it's pretty straightforward. So what we're going to be doing first is we'll go over to our throttle quadrant, and we're going to set the RPM to be fully forward. So we'll move the RPM forward here. Supercharger will stay in M ratio, and we're going to lower the radiator shutter to the down position. This will open it up. Then we'll set the mixture to the start position. And then we're going to move the throttle towards a stop. Then when we're ready, we'll press E to start, and the automated sequence will start taking over. Just going to pull back on the stick and hold the brakes. The engine's been rotated a few times, so they're going to start priming it. Alright, so now the engine's going to be primed, it'll be good to get started. As the engine starts over, then we can look at the pilot's notes for the Tempest Mk.V. Alright, so now with the engine started, we're going to taxi the Mk.V, and there's no tail wheel to worry about to unlock or lock, so we just hold the stick back, and what we're going to do is we're going to set the mixture from the start position to the normal position, because if you keep it in start, then there's a lock that should prevent the throttle from moving any further forward. So move it to the normal position. We can leave the radiator shown in the down position, it's up to you if you want to bring it up or not. Then we can just add some power and start taxiing. There's going to be a bit of a pull to the right, so you're going to need some left rudder or brake in order to keep it straight initially. So now we'll skip forward to the takeoff sequence. So to take off on the Tempest Mk.V, you're going to set the rudder trim fully to the port side, which is left. The elevator trim will be 1.5 divisions nose down from neutral, and the flap's going to be up. Supercharger will remain in the M ratio, and the radiator shuttle will be set to the down position. You'll then set the propeller to fully forward, and when you're ready for takeoff, you'll set the throttle to plus 4 pounds of boost, and you'll rotate about 100 miles per hour. And your best climb to 20,000 feet is going to be at 185 miles per hour. Now you can use up to 20 to 30 degrees of flaps if you want on the takeoff, but this will increase the swinging tendency to the right, so if you do use it, just be aware of that. Alright, so we're going to get ourselves lined up on the runway here. I'm going to bring it to a stop. Make sure I'm nice and centered. I'm not cocked off to the side. Alright, now we're going to apply the brakes fully, and then we'll come to a stop. Alright, so we're going to close the canopy first. Then we're going to set the rudder trim all the way to the port. See that there, moving towards that takeoff position. And the elevator trim about 1.5 divisions nose down from neutral. The shutter is down, flaps are up, superchargers in the M ratio, and our propeller is all the way forward. And then we're good to go. So now we're going to start increasing the power up to about 4 pounds of boost, and we'll start rolling. Plane's going to pull to the right, so you need some left rudder to keep it straight. As you gain more airspeed, that left rudder is going to become a bit more effective. You're going to be needing some right rudder to keep straight on the runway. Before pressure, get the tail off the ground. At 100 miles per hour, we get some back pressure and we rotate. Once we're ready to climb, you're going to get the gear up. And if you were using the flaps, then you'll start retracting them once you get above 200 feet. Then you can focus on accelerating to 185 miles per hour and bringing the boost up to plus 7 if you want. This will give you about an hour's worth of climb speed at this. I'm just going to bring it back though to the max continuous of 3,150 RPM with plus 4 pounds of boost. As we're just going to join the pattern here, so we'll have a look at how to land on the Tempest Mk.V. On downwind, your airspeed is going to be below 200 miles per hour, and the propeller will be set fully forward. Because you're at a low altitude, the supercharger will need to be on the M ratio, then you can extend the landing gear. By the end of downwind, your airspeed is going to slow to about 150 miles per hour, and you can set the flaps to 30 degrees, and you'll begin to base the final turn with an airspeed between 130 and 140 miles per hour. You'll maintain this during the turn, and then on the short final, you're going to set the flaps all the way out to full, and you'll begin slowing to 100 miles per hour to come in for the landing. Alright, so now we're getting established on downwind here, getting our spacing for the runway. Maintaining the pattern altitude, we've reduced the power a bit, we're trying to slow it down below 200 miles per hour. And then checking our position, make sure we're still good on spacing. There we are, we're below our airspeed we want. So we're going to drop the landing gear now. Let's bring in some more drag, slow us down further to about 150. And we're going to start getting the flaps out to 30 degrees as well. Now we'll set the propeller fully forward, and then we'll begin our base to final turn. Base to final turn, we don't want to lose too much airspeed. We don't want to keep anything lower than 130 to 140 miles per hour in the turn according to the manual. Just going to keep our turn coming and do that. Trying to visualize our aiming point. It's going to change a little bit because once we get on short final, we're going to send the flaps all the way out to 80 degrees. And that's going to add a lot of drag, and it will allow us to make a steeper approach. So when you're making this turn, don't let yourself get too low, or else you'll end up having to add power to come into land. So we're coming about 400, 500 feet or so, get our flaps all the way out, and start reducing the power, start slowing us down, and pointing at the runway. So by here we're about idle power already, keep coming in. Start leveling the plane off to bleed off that vertical speed. Then we can hold it off in a 3-point attitude for the touchdown. Then we'll hold full back pressure and applying the brakes. And if you're applying the rudders as you're coming to a stop while you're holding the brakes, this will give you some directional control to help you stay straight on the runway. And you can slow down to a manageable taxi speed. You can open the canopy and retract the flaps. That completes the tutorial for the Tempest Mk.V. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to share it with your friends and become a subscriber. And until next time, always remember to fly safe and check your six.